So now, we're going to have a very interesting session. I call this interesting because it's supposed to be a round table, but I can see a rectangle, which is here. So probably I will need this vacated for the speakers. Jacob, if you could please take your place there. So this is a thought leadership discussion on how data will transform the enterprise. So we've been talking about data, we've been talking about how data will be leveraged, we've been talking about data fidelity. Jacob talked about data governance as to how important it is to have the right set of data. Vikram, CIO for Reliance Retail, if he could join us, please. Anil Menon, so the coffee is on him, Starbucks. Mr. Shanth Kumar, Head of Digital Marketing, Bioderma. Mr. Utkarsh Somaiyaa, Head of Digital Transformation and Customer Analytics at Aditya Birla. Thank you, sir. Kunal Mehta, CIO, Raymond. Complete man, he's dressed differently as well. That's a swank little outfit. Rob, you're already there. Ranjit, he was kind of traveling. I'm not sure if he's reached. And Satish is already here. So this is going to be a small roundtable discussion in this format. And I find it very weird calling it a roundtable. But then it's going to be a discussion on how data is going to transform the way enterprises function today. So Rob, you are the person in charge, so all yours.
Great. Well, welcome everybody to the roundtable session of today. The conversations are around leadership data in retail, and I'm going to start by throwing over a general question. Is around trends in customer experience. So what have you seen recently in customer experience that have made you excited? So who'd like to take that one?
So hi everyone, I'm Vikram from Reliance. So Rob, I'm going to talk about an experience that I have pretty much quite frequently, and how that's leading into the trends that are happening, right? So I'm a runner and I'm a trekker, okay? There is one brand that I engage with on a very regular basis. So every time I go for a big trek, I'm going to be going to that particular brand, buying their product, okay? I've been doing this over the last 5-7 years. So they know everything about me because I've been shopping there. They have my phone number, my demographic, what I buy, etc. When I go online onto the same brand after several years, surprisingly, I realized that they're throwing a whole bouquet of offerings to me, knowing that I only buy running apparel and I buy trekking stuff from them, nothing else. What this gives me an impression of, and I would not really prejudge the brand because I really love their product and how good they are offline and how knowledgeable they are about me. Online, they don't seem to have connected with me. And that's what I would say is a trend that is now coming into focus and onward. I think what retailers are now trying to do is to make sure that journeys are connected. In this case, this is a disconnected journey, but I think the focus and the trends that are happening now are more towards connected journeys to make sure that they are, anyone who understands the customer offline is understanding the same customer online. I think that's one key aspect. Another aspect that I see happening in the online space is really on the customer journeys. I'm realizing that a lot of players are actually understanding the flow of the customer as they go through a website, for example, on an online space, understanding where they drop off, and starting to make interventions at these points where they drop off. So I think that these are the two key trends that I think are happening: connected journey and understanding where customers start getting dissatisfied and trying to make interventions around that.
That's great. Anyone got any other views? Any other companies are doing things that are interesting?
So I think so. I represent the Aditya Birla Group. Having worked in analytics for almost 18 years and being a retail dominated and financial services, I think somewhere as all of us leaders in the business domain, we have not been honest or we have not put enough effort in the customer data part. We definitely want to service them. We give them the right products. But before that, as you just mentioned, the customer touch point, the customer journey, a bit more holistic view in terms of data. And there's a stark difference between an online and an offline business model. So, when we see companies which are now into both of those, we'll realize, yes, I have been doing good job in A segment in online and B segment in offline. But as you just said, our comprehensive understanding of the customer, I think that's where we have to take major steps. And believe me, we saw retail, we saw a couple of industries doing this way much more faster. 5 years, I'm definitely sure in the same forum, we'll find much different and maybe manufacturing industries. So, it's not only about consumer-facing retail. Today, it might be B2B to C or B2C. It will not be restricted to such, domain. I think the future is much more faster coming to us. So as leaders of various domains, we probably have to be more understanding in that point for sure.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to come in?
I could come in on that quickly. On Vikram, your point I think is good. It's Vikram, is that the name? Yeah. I think a lot of that has to do with the move towards more agile cross-functional organizations, where category makes decisions about product personalization, product will make decisions around user interface and journeys, and then marketing will be running campaigns, and CRM will be handling incidences. If they're all working together and aware of the different journey steps and how they're measured and organized that way, they'd behave that way. Category would know this is an exploring user, a habit-formed user, a loyalty user, et cetera. And that becomes an organizational challenge once you've scaled a certain amount to sort of get everyone on the same page around not optimizing for their specific numbers, but looking after the overall customer journey.
Hi, my name is Shanth, and I take care of the organization of digital marketing in terms of NAOS, which is Biodama. In terms what we have seen this year, a learning for us from the organization perspective is that from a customer's experience perspective, we started reading the attributes of our consumers who are buying. And the learning out of this is that we need to tap into those attributes, because if a person has bought a particular product of us, convincing them and getting back to them, there's a certain lead time. How do we keep them engaged in this lead time? So the better way, what we think is that we understand what are the other hobbies and other factors which will keep them engaged. And a couple of data which we have got, and we start reading those data and we started interpreting it and making sense out of it. So what did we do and what are we going to do is that we try to bifurcate them into different personas, basis the age group, demographics and the psychographics, and based on those models, we fit these consumers and then start approaching them and satisfying those other lifestyle needs which they feel is still not fulfilled or any other brands have not given them a solution of. So that's how we look into making it as excellence model.
That's great. One thing I particularly love is companies who take customer problems and deal with them with a technology solution. Companies like Alibaba, I don't know if you saw, they are pioneers in facial recognition in terms of payment. And when they did some customer research, one of the blockers to that was customers didn't like looking at their own face when they were making a payment. So they invested in beautification technology so that when customers saw their own face, they had almost an Instagram filter to make them look more attractive while still being able to recognize enough facial features to make payment. So this process of seeing a problem and dealing with it with a technology solution, I just love stuff like that. So let's move on to what are the kind of challenges if you want to go down a customer-centric path and introduce these kind of data? What kind of implementation challenges have we seen around the table, and how have we come about trying to solve those?
Let me go with Anil from Starbucks. So what I hear loud from this table is that, yes, the customer journey is more AI-driven for sure. The future looks brighter on there. But we need also to understand that how soon is this technology going to change. The life of technology is no more 4, 5 years or 6 years. It's more in a year and a half, and then we change the whole dynamism around there. While we are talking about AI being the platform for it, it becomes a lot of challenging as one of the aspects which you spoke about. There are many moving parts there. How do you seamlessly connect this? Few of them are legacy systems which no more come into play in this journey. So the major challenges which we face is how do you phase out? While phasing out, how do you make sure that the customer experience is no more affected, or we have a benchmark and we are on the benchmark. The second aspect to that is, which is more back-end in nature, is the partner or the employee perspective around it. While you have a change, while you're trying to do something for the customer, you always need to be cognizant of the fact that your partners or your employees are the main source of that experience, other than the technology aspect of it. How do you do that adaptation on the back end? That's a huge game changer for us in terms of customer experience.
Yeah, absolutely, technology is definitely one of the killers. Anyone else has got anything to say on this?
Yeah, so this is Satish. I just want to talk about from the customer point of view, because what's happened in last 5, 6 years is the consumers want the same kind of experience across channels. So it's not that if you are going to store, I would like the same experience which I experience in an online channel. That's something which was not the focus for companies for some point of time. One example which I give is Shoppers Stop, biggest a retailer with a loyalty program. Almost 75% of the sales are coming for citizens, but still their footfalls are going down for last so many quarters, and also at the same time the average ticket size is also not growing. At the same time, they are also facing competition with online players. So I think what they've realized is, even we have the infinite data of these customers, we're not able to increase the footfalls, not able to sell more. And in last 3-4 quarters, what they've realized is use the data to convert into a personalized shopper program. And that's now counting for 20% of their sales. So they are now making sure that the data which they have, they use it to serve customer in a better way. And this is a good thing for companies in India, because remember in 2007, 2008, we are pitching to companies to build personalized solutions based on data. And one of the big retailer, which is simple reply is, I don't have the data. It's not tagged with the customer at that point of time. So we have moved a long way from there to at least now, where customers are more empowered to use the data, and retailers are also responding in a much better professional way.
That's great.
And adding to even Satish's point is that I've been studying in terms of this lifestyle category for past 13 to 14 years. The difference what you've seen is that in terms of how they get connected, in terms of mass categories or daily consumption categories, convincing becomes very easy. The challenging part is that when you move up the ladder, either if you say the premium or the luxuries or anything aspect, because India, however you said done, there is an ample amount of monies, and people in tier 2, tier 3 are far more richer than which are there in the metros of the world. That psyche that which I think is different. We did a lot of analysis. I did FGDs and even delos. They stayed in with the consumers. A lady or a man who is quite rich will be convinced in investing gold or any other aspect other than taking care of the skin aspects and other lifestyle categories aspect. Europe, if you look into, is a totally different scenario. So the challenge in India is that how do we convince them in that aspect, so that even the ASPs becomes easy to sell or gets converted as a mass market. So we feel the challenging upper ladder is slightly.
Probably have a little different view on that. I don't think so that's the case anymore. I think people want to stay invested in this whole process of looking good these days. In fact, I think it's increasing even more and more from that perspective, because when you mention the people of the upper sect who want to invest in the other things, they already have that. They're in the land of plenty any which ways. So whatever is the extra money is actually going into lifestyle, honestly, and that's where the spend is increasing by the day. Again, I'll take Utkarsh's point forward that because we are also, into manufacturing and retail, the way you engage with a customer on the manufacturing side, when you're talking about the wholesalers and retailers and distributors, is very different. So I may have a loyalty program on that front, which works very, very differently from them. And the way you treat that loyalty program is different compared to the loyalty program or the customer engagement that you have for your front-end customers who are dealing with you online or through different channels. Yes, the line is depleting between how the customer is being treated in both the ways, but it's still, I don't think anyone's still been able to crack that code where you say, I know exactly how to treat this customer online or offline in both the ways, because I don't think people still have all the data that you need. You're buying online in marketplaces, you don't have any data around that. You come to the stores, you will have. You're going to a department store where I again sell different brands of mine. I don't get that data from a Shoppers Stop or a Lifestyle. So you're still playing with the data that you are in control of, and you try to work around that. But beyond that, I think we still have a long way to go in kind of understanding how to treat that customer end to end across all segments. That's my take, actually.
See, adding to your point, the primary factor also comes from the education level. I am into cosmetic category. In India, the challenge is still in terms of CTM, cleansing, toning, moisturizing. We are still at the 3 levels. China, Korea have gone to 8 to 9 levels of, The challenge also consumers being educated to that level. So that is also still, another thing if you look into, somebody mentioned during this one in terms of WeChat. In China, WeChat is itself an ecosystem. The consumer lives on WeChat. And still we are, even if we have WhatsApp, Facebooks of the world, we are still into the level 1, level 2s of the world, and we are not gone beyond that.
So I think we're talking about data and understanding the customer, but I think there's one more fundamental challenge that exists in organizations that are looking at customer across, is the entire life cycle, the entire supply chain kind of aspect. So let's say that a customer comes to a storefront, whether it be online or offline. What's the kind of presentation that's done to the customer? There's a journey defined out there. What's the kind of content that's put out there? Okay, well, once the content gets into an order, how quickly does the order flow across my integrated systems? Once it goes into a warehouse, how rightly does the warehouse guy pick the product? How well does he package it? Because this is going to actually end up in the hands of the customer. So I think, and then finally when you're actually delivering it, how is it handled and how is it actually delivered to the customer? So I think the challenge, if I have to say, other than data and facing the customer, is aligning everyone to make sure that they understand what is the meaning of customer experience. And I would actually propose to say that really, a guy in a warehouse who's sitting and picking product does not know that he's contributing to customer experience by picking it at the right speed at the right time. So I think what organizations probably need to do is to make sure this entire chain of people are actually sensitized and trainings conducted and saying, what do you mean to that customer? And I think that's important across the entire chain.
Yeah, that's great. That's a really interesting point. Quite often I go in to see retailers and start to talk about customer data and they say, hang on, customer, you need to go and speak to my marketing director. And so how do you ensure that within your businesses everyone is fully engaged in the process of customer centricity?
I think one small example which we think we are probably tried in a very good ways, and given we have got 19 to 20 industries that we cater to, so one core group we tried to make was the key distributors or the key people who are helping us in various businesses. So if somebody helping me in a manufacturing cement business or somebody else is helping me in a copper business, those people when they associate themselves with Aditya Birla, we have tried to do that across manufacturing and for consumer businesses and create a niche group for them. So these are the special catered ones. So these people becomes almost our brand ambassadors or 50,000 distributors who have got a special discount or basically I think a better communication and a treatment. I think discounts would be the last thing for me to worry about. It's the privilege that they want to be associated with the Aditya Birla across all categories. They walk into a Vanacent store or they walk into any store. when they say that we are a part of Aditya Birla and they get special treatment, I think that was one experience which we found fantastic as an example, which we tried for our core supporters. And we obviously want to extend it to customers also. But as you say, the numbers are huge when we go across industries. So we had to, I think you rightly pointed out in online, offline, customer experience, everybody has to agree on what customer experience. It was easier for us for those specific cases, but the moment the scale goes to in lakhs or crores, it becomes a very challenging point. And I think the last point here was it's the personalization which becomes a very, very important point now, given we have the fantastic Grofers and the people who are able to do it much more faster because of the research that is time they spend in understanding the consumers. Yeah, no, I think it's an example for quite a few industries for to learn from them. Okay, but that was one area I wanted to put up here.
I want to defend our competence. It's not that competent. Part of being a digital native business is that you don't have to deal with all the legacy stuff, but the other problem is that you've grown so fast, you've generated so much data in such a haphazard way that making sense of that, bringing governance to it is quite challenging. Yeah, to your point, I totally agree that having a chain, a totally connected chain from what a customer actually cares about back through every part of your organization. This is what I was trying to talk about essentially, is like what makes good organizations. You need to have that. You need to figure out what your North Star metric is, what are the inputs into that metric. How does everyone sort of contribute to that metric and have that same thing sort of mapped out. It's an evolving process. One of the challenges I think that we face in doing that, other than defining what those metrics should be, which is of course challenging, is the governance of it all. Because democratization also means that different teams are adding data. You can't create a really strict governance process. It has to be agile. People need to be able to add data to the data lake. You also have to know that you are controlling your data warehouse and the schemas there somehow in a certain way. You have to have gold standard and sort of whatever other data. And manage all those things, that's a challenge, even with all the tools we have. And I think it's going to become an even more important challenge this year because the data privacy sort of legislation is going to come into effect. So we're all just waiting for that other shoe to drop and realize that, so we're investing heavily in masking customer data, in data leak protection tools, looking for people running certain kinds of queries, all that kind of stuff. We have to harden up our systems. And I would argue even the large corporations like you are absolutely not hard. Because I know that our security guy is a penetration tester who's hacked all of you guys before. So we have as many problems. I mean, I think all of us have to take that a lot more seriously and take those investments as a priority this year. Yeah.
I think, Rob, one of the things, what I see, when I talk to customers, right, I talk to different retailers. So I say this when from my experience of talking to different industries and people, the point which most customers repeat to us when they talk to us is the fact that it is not a data issue, it is not a people issue, but this is something more like a change management. It's about redefining the organization as a whole. We need to ensure all the moving parts work together properly, and data forms a very important piece, and keeping the customer centricity in the middle of everything. And then the various stakeholders need to get aligned. Because the moment what happens, let's say from marketing or an IT, you take decisions on data, but your operations do not do that. You're kind of going one step forward and two steps back. So the whole essence is, when we go and talk to customers, we keep telling them, look, it's not just a data issue. It's more about a change management. It's about reinventing your DNA. The faster you adapt, you're going to have that much more space for you to grow faster. Because today's industry, today's competition is ruthless. We see big companies just disappear. Nokias of the world, Kodak. Someone told me the story that they had the technology before, but some intelligent guy decided, I'll not do it because my bread and butter business will take a hit. You don't have a chance because you don't have a second chance for you to reinvent yourself. So I think that, to me, is the biggest challenge. People need to look at it as a complete organizational change. It's more strategic in nature. It's not an IT problem, it's not an operational problem, but it just has to connect all the moving parts of an organization together.
Great. So if we think back many years, I'm sure, to the moment we all decided that we need to be more focused on the customer in my business, how did you decide where to start? Where was your priority? Anyone? Where do you start? So what was how did you prioritize where to start bringing the customer data into your business?
Well, I'm going to take a shot at it. Okay, there are many ways to start, but the way we work with Reliance Retail, we have several retail formats, right? Apparel, fashion, lifestyle, food, consumer durables, and a whole lot of other stuff. Everyone wants to do many things at the same time, okay? The way I've approached it, at least, is to sit with, let's say, one business head and make a list of the kind of problems that he faces. Now, this business is actually taking feedback from customers, so they are actually getting some information. Based on that, they decide how to, they want to do 5 things for a customer. The way we look at it is, look at your pain points, look at your biggest wins, a quick win wherever possible, and something that's going to enhance revenue. Anything that's customer facing or customer touching is by default priority number 1. Anything that's efficiency based behind the scenes tends to be a second priority unless it's really needs to be done. So I would just simplify it by saying anything that touches a customer is top priority, and you look at the output that this is going to give me. If it's really going to result in some revenue, some big increase, great. And I can take one example actually, just to kind of talk a little bit more. For example, my stores, typically in any offline retail business, a store manager is very well connected with the catchment of customers that actually comes to them, right? So they've got personal kind of interfaces with all of them. What's important is for this, so these guys, now in India this is quite a different situation than it is in the West, but a store manager, when he gets a new set of new lines, for example, he communicates out to his bunch of customers saying, hey, I got a bunch of new lines, you were looking for this, why don't you come and buy this, right? So that's something that we want to enable, to be able to democratize, as you said, have it at a decentralized level, where a store manager is able to directly communicate with their customers, saying my new line has come, you want to buy, send a set of information to them and let them then carry on the journey and then start engaging with them. So I think that's one thing, one more personalized thing that we want to do. We haven't really done it.
So I think very similar for us also. We specifically pointed out into the customer feedback. So we got a program called Mission Happiness across all the group companies, where every feedback that is coming, A, we are evaluating how have we actioned on that, and B, follow up on that is being communicated to customers. So there's a standard program across last 5 years. We went from various industries to make sure that Mission Happiness becomes a common program of all the feedback that comes to us by customer. We are tabulating, using insights and actioning, and then taking the the learnings from it and sharing across. And that's the first place we are also started using AI and machine learning in terms of word cloud, in terms of text analytics. So that's where I think one piece we thought customer experience was because the moment we ask customers what do you feel about us, it's our responsibility to go back to tell them that this is what we had done from what you gave us a feedback. Or else there'll be a fatigue of NPS or the feedback with the customer says, okay, I don't know what has happened, that's my feedback. I think that was one of the most strongest reasons for us to do, because the experience would be much more better next time when he returns to us.
One of the aspects that from the Starbucks culture we come up is yes, feedback is one of the mechanisms which goes a long way. But also we try to empower the partner, the employee, with enough of information so that he knows his customer better. And what generally drives in for Starbucks is connect, the human connect, which is though technology is part of it, but that's a connect, right? And how do you empower the employee to have a better connect with the customer is where we drive a lot of innovations and strategies for a better customer experience per se.
I think you asked what do you do? What do we do first? One of the ways Grofers really changed is Grofers went from a ops-centric company to a product-centric kind of company. So I think building a product function helped a lot. In fact, if anyone's in the audience, we're hiring a VP product, so if you're interested, work with me on that. Head consumer. I think the product discipline and integrating product and engineering into one function, I think has also helped a lot. Because if you micro-optimize for each department, you will tend to have less optimal results for a customer, and you need someone who's the voice of that customer, who has actually the authority and the alignment to get things done. And if you're a technology-led organization like we are, mostly that's working with engineering, and they need to have that kind of, that power to say that, so our product function has its own analytics function, which does a lot of the work I talked about. There's total engineering alignment there. There's user research and design sort of aligned there. And I think that organizationally structuring that way has helped a lot. I think the other thing which really makes you understand how to talk to your customers and what to measure is when you get stuck. I mean, we went from the company almost went out of business and then came back, was stuck, and so it was like, we have to go out and talk to our customers. And then you grow, you're on every magazine, you feel all happy, and now we're #1 in India. We passed Big Basket last quarter, and now we have a target on our back from this guy and Amazon and everybody else. And now you have to figure out, okay, well, what next? Now that we're here, we're not just chasing these guys, now we have to figure out. So then you go back to your customers and try to figure out the next thing. So a lot of it is just, I think growth lets you easily forget your customers because you get caught up in the vanity metrics of how your company runs. And a lot of it is the crises that help you do that.
Since we're talking about hiring, I'm also hiring quite a few tech guys.
No, I kind of agree with you because, a lot of things have to do with how the organization has been run over so many decades, and changing that mindset is very, very difficult. I mean, we've been a product-centric organization all these years, and all of a sudden you go and tell the business that now from becoming a product-centric, you start becoming a customer-centric organization it's a huge change, because all this time we were just thinking about, this is the product that we're good at making, and this is what the customer will want. All of a sudden, you're going back and asking, is this what the customer wants? And that is such a huge shift paradigm in terms of how everybody in the organization thinks. But again, that has to come right from the top, and it has to trickle down throughout the organization. So one is on that front, and then you start, again, like you said, look at the data and start targeting the right set of customers and see how you take it from there on.
Okay, great. In a minute, I'm going to come around and ask if you've got any great examples, specific examples of how you use customer data. But if I can tell a little story to give you a chance to think. I worked with a European retailer who was running at around about 70% of their lines on promotion at any one time. 70%. And I spoke to the CEO and said, well, why is this? You're quite a mature retailer. Why so high? And especially when we broke it down. And within that 70%, there was probably 20% that were good. They drove sales. There was 20% that was poor, actually declined sales. And then there was about 60% in the middle, which didn't really do anything at all. So why do you do it? So I went to see the stores. Stores, do you like these promotions? No, we hate them. I've got to get all the labels changed. I've got to order this extra stock. It's going to clog my back rooms. I hate it. Okay, well, maybe it's customer then. Customers, do you like this? No, you're just ripping me off. These aren't real promotions. They're on promotion all the time. And actually, there's a particular product I wanted to buy. It's on offer and you've got no stock left. So actually, I don't like it. So I go and see a commercial. Commercial, do you like it? Yes, I love it. It's great because I don't have to pay for it because the supplier's paying for it. Or if I don't promote it, my competitor's going to promote it. Or I'm being very customer-centric because I'm dropping the price and customers love that. So all of these reasons about why I need to have more promotions. And then you dig under that. And the reality is, I don't know what else to do. I can only do 3 things in commercial. I can change my range, I can change my prices, or I can promote. And I've got a sales gap, so I'm going to promote more. And so when you start to bring in the customer data and say, actually, there are lines in here that you're promoting which are actually diluting your sales, so stop those. There are lines in there that are actually great, so make sure you're getting behind those and giving them more space in store and more opportunities to grow. And then you really challenge yourself about this middle stuff because, yeah, okay, you're looking at your front margin, but you're missing all the operational cost of putting these on display, of changing the labels, of setting them up. Really challenge yourself on those. And with this particular retailer, we saw a 25% reduction in promotion count, margin improvement, and sales improvement. So that's my story. Who else here can give me some specific examples of how you use customer data to improve customer experience?
If you look at it now, people who are visiting Starbucks on a very frequent basis would know that there's a huge change in the food, which though we are having coffee at the best, but there are two aspects which we run now. One from the aspect of educating the customers about coffee, what's the different taste of coffee, how the beans should look like, and so on and so forth, different types of brewing around the coffee. The second part of it is the food. The balance of coffee and food is something which we are bringing into the, and that's just from the feedbacks, and this is how the Indian culture looks like. India still moves to a restaurant or a coffee shop with food as one of the bigger attracting element there. So that's something which we learned from the data. We understood from our customers, that we understood from our feedbacks, and the food makes a lot of sense there. So that's some stories which we...
That's great.
I have one. I already gave a few, but one of those slides I didn't show actually was, I don't know why I deleted them accidentally, is the supply chain hypothesis. So I showed the commercial ones in terms of merchandising, but also a hypothesis around what customers want in terms of service levels and supply chain. What we discovered is actually that we can degrade customer experience. So not that we had to improve it, but it was that the retention rates for customers who had their order delivered in 1 day versus 2 days were identical. Only at 3 days it started to drop. And it depended on the size of the order. So small orders, people want them faster. Large orders, people are willing to wait. So we found the actual impact was not significant enough that it was worth it. And that's important because if we take 2 days to deliver, that means we can send a full van. If we send a full van, that means we can save on supply chain costs, which goes directly into our discounting, which is what customers actually care about. And so we found sometimes the voice of the customer is not to improve every bloody thing in your service. Sometimes it's finding out, like you said about the discounting, what's actually irrelevant. What pieces of it don't matter. It's more important.
See, even adding to Anil's point is that through this data, what we have, how do we really understand and satisfy the consumers from a technical standpoint and also from an emotional standpoint. So for example, if a consumer is having if my customer is having any kind of an skin related aspects, we have dermatologists and everything. So we have the digital platform which we connect to them. Also, the same consumer also has follow certain number of influencers. So we use the influencers platform. So that's where they get convinced on both the aspect of it. So that's how we try to make sense of them and make sure that the core objective is also in terms of the consumer lifetime value. As of now, the consumer lifetime value is if it has X cost for me, over the period of time, how should I maintain him or her so that reduces the cost over the period of time. So that we are looking into.
That's brilliant. We're going to have to wrap up this conversation now. So let's just finish off. Anybody who is going to leave here today to start their customer journey, any words of advice for those guys?
Yeah, I think what we've been talking about is make sure you are collecting all the pieces of data of your customers. So be it your transactions, be it the demographic, if you're an online customer, be it your your clickstream, how you've actually flowed through your journeys, where you've dropped, what have you bought. So try to collect all that information, and as I think he rightly said, have it all in your common data lake. Make sure that it's been populated from all sides, and then you need to have the right tools that's going to be able to crunch that information and be able to say, make some actionable decisions out of it. So I think the key message is collect data about your customer, and yeah, that's about it.
I'll just add to that, saying that while you collect data, just to add on to what you said, is also take the buyings from the stakeholders internally to make the best out of the data out of there, what output do you get, how do you translate it into better customer journeys?
I think in the last part, I think the information required, the tools, the business mind, and the culture that you just mentioned. I think, as you said, we have to move from the product to the customer-centric base. Think that this is the way to go forward, because we have moved from products to services. We have moved from discounts to value. We have moved from, what best do I make rather than what do you need. So this is the best forum for us to understand that tools are the ones that we need to use to go. Because very shortly you will find customers having multiple options if they don't have today. So it's your need to pursue the customer rather than the customer coming to you.
Yeah, so just last thing, and this is about the industry. So we track retail, e-commerce, financial services in terms of consumer experience index. And this is something which we are tracking for last 3-4 years. And the good news is across these sectors, companies are continuously improving their experience of customer service experience index. And the increase was much better last year, because they realized that, that's the only way to retain the customer and to sell more goods to customers. So yeah, there is a positive growth in the market, and everyone realized that this is the way to, remain relevant in the market. Yeah.
I'll just sum it up in my own thought. I think to acquire a customer is getting more competitive. If you have a customer, you take care of your customer, otherwise somebody else will take care of your customer and take him away. We've seen this in several forms. You have an existing customer, it's that much easier for you to upsell, to make him a loyal customer. That journey, if you're able to do it more focused, it's the easiest way to success for you to grow. Depending on footfalls, acquiring new customers is fantastic and great, but that's not going to help you, because they may be just, as Jacob said, come in once, buy a discount sale, and they're going to disappear. They're what I call as value seekers, right? They're just going to come in when you have an offer. They're not going to be your permanent customers. And then the most important thing when we have the customer journey experience is to have a very clear strategy. Your strategy might be entirely different from him. So I think it needs to adapt and adhere to your ethos. You will have a very clear view on this is what my company stands for. How do I design my experience of a customer based on that? It may be different for an online, offline, but I still think the channels are irrelevant, because channel is a way where the customer is communicating to you. Whether it's online or offline, it still needs to be the same. The customer experience has to be tops. You have to be more proactive and faster to hold of your customers.
Great. Well, thanks, everybody. That's been a fantastic chat. Round of applause for everyone who's contributed today.
It's a motley mix. It's a motley mix of digital natives, not so natives, but yeah, adopting digital in a very, very good and calculated and calibrated manner. So, Rob, may I please ask you to do the honors and give out mementos to a few of our speakers today? So, could we have them out here, please? Or it's probably, anyways, let's all get onto the stage for a group photograph as well.